Hello, I'm Greg Anderson. Back in October, Senator Vinny DiMacedo, state senator, announced that he is leaving office and is going to move towards higher education. Got a great job. Well, after a bruising Plymouth and Barnstable district primary, two attorneys have made it to the next round and seek your vote on Tuesday, May 19th. Today, Susan Moran, she is a Democrat, and she is here to talk a little bit about her perspectives and why she asks for your vote. That's next on Meet the Candidates. I am thrilled to introduce my guest to the left of me and perhaps, well, I guess to the left of you as well, Susan Moran. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Greg, and thanks to Sandwich Public Television. I'm excited for this opportunity.
Yeah, you said your dad worked at WGBH.
I was so lucky growing up. I was the oldest of five girls. He was very encouraging, very ahead of his time, and to really be introduced to the world and that, to have those folks in your living room was just an incredible experience.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to introduce you perhaps to people who may not know much about you. I know we're close to the election of May 19th, and we hope people do get out to the vote, and I'm sure some have already mailed it in. But and I may call you Susan.
Please.
Okay, Susan, tell me a little bit about what is bringing you to where you are today as it relates to running for office, and what is your experience that brings you up to this decision?
Well, the job really chose me, and I've really come to realize that the more that I speak. I was at a library board meeting in West Falmouth. There was an opening coming up for selectmen, and at that point, my youngest, was going off to college, and I thought, it's time for me to serve the town. I was elected through, just a lot of pavement pounding, a lot of glasses of coffee and tea. And because I wasn't well known, I hadn't done, lots of committee work. Once I was on the board, I've been a high vote getter because I work and I produce results. I've also been really privileged to be nominated and asked to work in county government. I'm the deputy speaker of the Barnstable County Legislature, which is the Assembly of Delegates. And from there, I also chair economic development for Barnstable County, as well as being vice chair of Falmouth. And, one position informs upon the other. I feel like, the more that you give your time and work in public service, the smarter you become, the more folks you talk to and listen to who give you ideas. That's how you become the best public servant you can. And going to the State House is just the next step.
So you ran an election, very successful primary race.
Mhm.
Now you are running a race in a pandemic. What has that been like?
Well, the most important thing is for folks to be healthy, and I make a lot of phone calls every single day, and my first question is, how are you? This is unprecedented. It's scary. The future is not exactly planned. Things are changing depending on the test results, and it's challenging for everyone, and I understand that. And the first priority is safety. That being said, the Plymouth Barnstable district is right now, the government is operating without representation as a senator. So I'm anxious for the May 19 election to occur. We're encouraging early voting along with the town clerks. We're keeping in close touch with them in terms of, just advising folks on, go to the town website, print out the early ballot request, those kinds of things, because the clerks are trying to keep everyone safe as well.
You would be representing Bourne, Falmouth, Kingston, Pembroke, Plymouth, and Sandwich.
Right.
you are also, not also, but you are a very accomplished attorney for 30 years, I believe, and you have a specialty in complex business litigation. First of all, I think I understand what that is, but what is it? And then specifically, how does your legal experience fuel you to be a great senator?
Sure. So, I look at a lawyer as someone who helps you get to your goal. When you look at complex business litigation, I was privileged to work with many great attorneys and worked for companies where I would have a successful litigation. And that company would later call me and say, gee, you did a really good job when I lost against you. How about you representing me? And those are the kinds of things I'm most proud of. And it's really when you have the education as a lawyer, the reason I love the job is because it allows you an opportunity to learn about many things. Depending on the substance of your case, that's what you have to become very well schooled and very knowledgeable in. When you look at how that transfers, I've had mediation certification. I've really learned over the years that it's incredibly important to listen to the other side. Not only does it inform you, but maybe there's a way to meet in the middle, and maybe there's a way to accomplish your goal in an even better fashion. So I try to bring those skills that I have as an attorney to my public service, and I'm very privileged to be able to serve the community in that way.
Just as long as you don't sue me for anything that I say, or just want to make that clear.
You got it.
But let me ask you this: of those, what are they? Six towns within the Barnstable and Plymouth district. Many of them have situations, issues, dynamics that are very universal. There's education, there's infrastructure, um, but they also have very unique situations that really need addressing. Obviously, the pandemic's impact, and I think of Plymouth with Plymouth 400, canceled and postponed events. I mean, how do you feed? How do you envision you would feed as a state senator all of your different children and meet needs and manage that? I don't know how that works. How do you envision it working?
Well, my background gives me particular training to be prepared to do that. For example, the Plymouth 400, incredible economic opportunity for Plymouth. In my background, one of the things I've done, I've managed a B&B before there were Airbnbs. I was chair of the tourism committee for the Chamber of Commerce. Certainly, and I'm working right now on behalf of the Falmouth EDC, Economic Development, with the Falmouth municipality and the Chamber of Commerce to create a fund for small businesses to help them survive this pandemic. With Wendy Norcross from the Cape Cod Chamber, Maria Leva from the Canal Chamber, and with Plymouth in mind and involved, I've been working on the Bridge Fix team so that the Department of Transportation, the Army Corps of Engineers, as they come together to look at this transportation really challenge, that it has the same effect for both sides of the bridge. I mean, we want to be able to get back and forth in an efficient way. Those things, my knowledge as a board member of the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority, informs me about transportation needs as we are in this pandemic and many folks are working from home on both sides of the bridge. So every town is unique. Every town has unique and talented folks that work on behalf of the town. But my experience is broad and my relationships are deep with legislation. When you look at the folks that have endorsed me, I've been working just like Senator Terry Murray, just like Senator DiMacedo. I've long worked on both sides of the aisle on these major projects, and that informs me to be a good senator.
Let me pick up on what you're saying about the bridges and transportation. Uh, you said you're on a fixed team, so it's kind of a focus on the two bridges and that transportation method. Uh, how does that look to you over the next 5 years? What do you see it becoming of the repair, replacement et cetera?
Well, one of the things that I think is important right now, you know, we have to look at projects with a different eye in terms of coming out of the pandemic, and it's really a jobs creation issue in my mind. When you look at such a huge project in transportation in general, I think it should be multimodal. For example, my experience on climate change issues, of course, it has focus on our carbon emissions. I think we see right now we're having everyone working from home is, it's an adjustment. It does have a positive effect on carbon emissions. But as we look at Route 3, for example, on the Plymouth side of the bridge, and we look at the bridges, and we just look at transportation right now. There's a transportation bill that was recently passed by the Senate. I'm looking forward to working with other senators and putting people to work on those projects, because a lot of folks aren't able to do the same work that they were before the pandemic.
So do you envision new bridges in 10 years? How about both ends of on either end of the bridge, Plymouth and of course, Bourne? How does that look in your mind? What do you
Well,
see?
I appreciate that the Army Corps of Engineers has been able to forward the plan. I think it's going to be something we continue to talk about for quite a long time, and we will work the Department of Transportation with the Army Corps on funding and a plan as to how the responsibility might transfer, and the way it might be funded.
Susan, let's talk a little bit about the pandemic. Plymouth and Barnstable counties have, much like the rest of the country, have been hammered by
Mm.
this pandemic. And there are two competing voices as I see it. There is the open now, let's get it going again. We need to get these restaurants and stores and the economy going. And then we have the hold on, not so fast. We have more work to be done. And then I think there's a large group of people in the middle that are thinking, I don't really know where to land. I kind of think both. What do you feel of the governor's plan, the four-phase plan that he has just rolled out?
So I am very appreciative of the governor's leadership with respect to that plan. I think the fact that, I believe it was yesterday, that he started rolling that out just in terms of the concept, and it's such a balancing act. I was reading uh, infectious disease specialist was talking yesterday about how we really have to slow down on opening, because if you're in a small space, there's going to be transmission even with, beyond the 6 feet. If you're in a larger space, there's less to worry about. And so these are the kind of commonsensical things that the experts that the governor is gathering are going to be putting together. As chair of Barnstable County Economic Development for the Cape, we're looking at pulling together various vocations, various job folks, various leaders in economic positions to say what's special about what you do that should be included in the rules. Golf courses, for example, were open recently because that's the wide open outdoors for the most part. So it's a matter of tailoring things. So the Cape from Senator Sear has put together a great group. I'm on those calls looking at a potential opening plan, but I'm also, for Barnstable County, I'm on the calls with all the emergency folks who are looking at, this is our hospitalization capacity, these are our new cases, when is the curve going to flatten, do we plan for a second wave, how much do we wade into this water, and what is the time where we take the safety concerns and the economic concerns, and if that balance starts to tip. So I appreciate very much the governor taking step by step, and I appreciate he's putting together experts. He's listening to a wide variety of folks. Certainly I think there should be more groups included, but that's a judgment call in terms of how big and how little. But that's why I formed the Barnstable County Economic Development smaller group to funnel those other businesses and get these requests to the governor.
Your experience in all of these committees and groups and calls that you're on, it appears as if you You really do have your finger on the pulse, or at least it sounds like you have your finger on the pulse of what is happening within our district and perhaps with the state as it relates to the reopening. It was also yesterday that your challenger listed a recovery plan. In fact, I got a mailer in my mailbox of a 10-point recovery plan. I'm not going to spend time with you talking about that, but to the extent in your mind there is a plan, what does that look like in the Susan Moran administration?
Sure. So I'm not going to suggest that I operate as an individual. My plan for being your senator is to continue as an informed person, as a senator, with the relationships and the endorsements that I have with legislators. I don't think that Governor Baker was following up on my opponent's plan to open golf courses. It's like me saying, I really think the sun should rise tomorrow. It's going to happen anyway. I'm joining right now, and I work with legislators. I have endorsements from not only the Senate president, I've got endorsements from Senator Sear, from Senator Pacheco, from all the representatives. There's another one coming out, first blast, Congressman Keating today. So I am going to join and support legislators who are already working on not only pandemic issues, but economic development issues. And I'm already informed about all the pending plans, and I will have new ideas. I want to farm the ocean. I want to have a whole new ocean farming economy that will couple with folks who are able to work at home and be close to their jobs.
You are a big fan of small business. As I did some research on you, main streets in Plymouth and Barnstable counties, there are a lot of businesses that are shuttered up, and unfortunately some may not come back. They may not survive. We hope they all do. What is the role of a state senator in helping these wounded small businesses in a pandemic, or even coming out of this, to your understanding?
Well, I think the first thing is, for example, what we're doing in Falmouth. We're looking at leveraging funding from potential solar development that I've done as an EDIC board member, but I also do as an attorney. Those are funds that would not have existed if our board did not further that project. So those are funds right now that are being considered to then take and lend to businesses. Now, when those businesses are allowed to survive, as you suggest, they pay back to the town in terms of tax monies that businesses pay, in terms of the economy, in terms of bringing folks to that main street, and in terms of jobs. So my economic plan usually involves some part of leveraging, where you take a finite amount of money and you look at what it can produce for people, whether it's lifestyle, improvements because of economic strength in many ways. I mean, those are the kind of programs I favor.
So if I am a small business owner that you're referring to in Pembroke, and I'm getting excited about what you just said, that there may be funds available, what do I need to know? How would that work? And what needs to happen to release those funds?
So I'm in favor of legislative programs that really support small business. When you look at the federal funds, the stimulus funds that were distributed and really intended for small business, there was some disparity as to larger companies that felt they qualified, took some funds, then gave it back. I'm interested in state plans that will support small businesses with in other words, so supported loans, for example. So businesses would be able to borrow at a lower rate because the small business associations and state funding can back that up. So that I think we're going to need to look at a tremendous amount of that kind of small business support, whether it's Pembroke, Kingston, anywhere in the district.
Switching gears, yet still on the pandemic issue, and I trust me, we're gonna hit some other topics as well. Liquor stores are open, grocery stores are open. They are deemed essential, and we understand that. But there is a lot more talk lately, and not even lately, it's been all along, but it's kind of hitting a crescendo a little bit here as it relates to places of worship, churches. In your mind, should those be deemed essential? And much like many other restrictions of arrows on the floor and social distancing, they should be able to open as well?
You know, I think that places of worship are foundational institutions, and in terms of community and community development, we work a lot with the faith community in you know, in the between the faith community and the municipalities. That being said, I think that all of these decisions are going to have to follow this 4-point plan where there are sort of guidelines put in. For example, you know, how big is the space? How much social distancing is allowed? Is there, you know, are there hand washing stations available? Are masks required? I think that you need to get to a place in every business where you have safe tools so that the most vulnerable folks in our community are protected as best they can be. And then those folks will have the choice of, for example, attending a service. If it's a large building, maybe it's an outdoor service. I think that, you know, that from the beginning part of the guidelines, I think that might be sort of a first step into religious services.
So when you look at this, there's a news stories of churches that stay open, they get fined. This is an essential function of our community. When you observe those situations and they're kind of pounding the fist at the governor saying, open these up, am I deducing that you side with the governor on this and that it is probably a good bet to keep them shuttered until this 4-phase plan starts to work its way out?
I agree with, I think in the 4-point plan, certainly, you know, faith organizations will be included. When you look at the recommendations, and, you know, I think that people who are attending are really going to be conscious about being sure, you know, if I'm an unknown carrier, for example, I certainly don't want to put anyone else at risk. So I think that the faith community is particularly good at that kind of community thinking, which we all need to have. But I would think, for, you know, the example I mentioned, outdoor services, maybe that's considered, I don't know all the specifics of the guidelines. Maybe that's a 2, maybe indoor is more of a 3. I'm very anxious to see how these recommendations come out on, I believe it's the 18th.
Where do you stand on this discussion of releasing prisoners to mitigate COVID in the jail system?
I think that there should be some release, because I've read some of the cases where, you know, there's a balancing test that's being reviewed where you risk the contagion of other residents, inmates, and especially those frontline workers, where there have been a case or two, not in Barnstable County, I understand, but so you'd look at what is there a contagion factor that you're managing? What is the, I think you have to look at the dangerousness to society, and, you know, so some of the cases have looked at, you know, where it's a tough place, where do you draw the line? You have to look at how, you know, how crowded is the facility. So these are all things that I think have to be looked at.
And many of the sheriffs have actually said, no, this is not a good idea. Is that too hard of a line?
No, I think that that's you know, when you have an advocate like sheriffs are advocates, I think you need to hear that view, and I appreciate the clarity of the position that they've been taking, but you also have to balance other views.
Let's talk a little bit about healthcare. I know that that is also something, especially affordable healthcare for everyone. Um, we are in this pandemic. There was a news report today that Massachusetts medical facilities will lose $5 billion as a result of this. It is estimated. How does your passion for affordable healthcare uh, go up against the financial crisis that the medical the healthcare industry is facing right now? How do the two intersect?
So, first of all, I think we need special recognition and funding for frontline workers, especially hospitals. I have a long medical history of breast cancer that I've been able to survive and really got great medical care. That being said, it was very dependent on individuals. It was very dependent on being a really strong advocate to ask questions. And I think that when you look at healthcare, insurance is such it's sort of an unwelcome partner in a lot of the decisions. So I think that definitely has to be addressed. But the hospitals that are doing their best to survive and finding it to be part of the solution to be really furloughing their nursing troops, and these are the fighters who are helping us, in the most intimate frontline way. That's when I think you really need to draw the line. The nurses, the teachers, the folks who are right now risking their health, their family's health, to serve the public, and especially when you're ill and you're hospitalized and you don't even, maybe you've tested positive, maybe you're still showing symptoms, but you don't even have that test yet. These are the experts that, be the last possible folks that we should even think about not supporting financially.
When we look at affordable healthcare, on your website, you speak to funding for community health centers, women's access to reproductive health, and affordability. What I'm not seeing, and I'd be interested in your take, is healthcare as it relates to seniors and veterans. And of course, we know what's going on in the soldiers' homes and in the nursing home industry. Can you speak to the healthcare component as it relates to both of those groups?
Sure. Well, I think that this COVID, it is a incredible awakening for all of us in terms of resources, governmental, and in sort of when you look at veterans or senior facility, structure in the way they run. These are the folks that are the fabric of who we are as a community. These are the folks who have, as veterans, put themselves on the line for us. And we won't have services if we don't make sure that these folks get the benefits that they work for and that they're entitled to, and that they put their lives at risk for. And it's the same thing with our elderly. They're a vulnerable population, we're told, with COVID. And when you look at folks who may have shorter years ahead of them, I don't think there's any way to look at it other than, why should those be the best years possible? These are our grandmothers, our mothers, these are our teachers, these are folks that have given, they've made all of us who we are, and we should, invite them to the conversation. What about housing? What sort of housing do you want? Do you want to be near public transportation? Do you want to make it, a little easier to sell your really big home, and things like that? I think we're there's a spotlight that's been put on our community in that way through this COVID, and that's something we've got to address.
You have an interest in mental health issues.
Mhm.
Some say that we talk about the violent crimes in our communities and in our country, and gun incidences of gun violence, drug addiction, and we look at all of these almost in silos. but some say that we don't connect mental illness to these crimes and to these perpetrators. How do you dovetail those two, and do you?
Sure, I absolutely do. I worked for a number of years as a counselor in mental health in a locked unit with addictions treatment, adult, adolescent. So I have a sort of really fundamental understanding of how difficult it is, the challenges that people face, and I couldn't be more proud of the Senate President and Senator Sear having an initiative that is right now taking a 360 look at mental health and being sure that it is coupled with the healthcare system so that there isn't, there aren't silos. And I think that when you look at the opioid problem, I certainly think that there's a lot of sort of crossing of problems, whether it's mental health, whether it's addiction issues. Alcohol is an incredible issue of addiction. There are folks who and get involved with crime. I think that the program on the Cape, where there is some drug treatment within the prison system. Those are the kinds of things that we really should be partnering with experts, and it's not only more financially efficient, there'll be a better success rate. These are complicated problems. It's nothing where you can say, oh, we just need more insurance and the opioid problem will be fixed. No, when you have an opioid addiction issue of any kind, you're at bottom. You come in with an incredible life-saving need. You don't necessarily have all your insurance premiums paid up at that point in time. What we do need are more expanded stays. We need more treatment options because it's not a one-size-fits-all problem.
When you look at the funding for something like that, though, because I have one of my questions for you is, in a perfect world, what would you like to see specifically change as it relates to the opioid addiction crisis that we have over the next, say, 5 years? What would that look like to you with some of the initiatives that you have in mind, but also how do we pay for it?
Sure. So as your senator, one of the things, the idea that I would like to see would be to involve employers. We know that any sort of a addiction issue has a real economic toll. A lot of folks have incredible expertise. They're incredibly talented. They've been trained. And when this scourge comes upon them, they then, for one reason or another, just cannot stay employed. And I would like to see tax credits to employers who are able to still keep those employees on and support them through the treatment. I think that'll also dovetail with the need for longer treatment. So I would actually have a financial incentive for folks who are going through treatment to be able to keep their jobs.
Let's shift gears and talk about education. We know that all things are upside down. My son is at the University of New Hampshire. My daughter's in high school, and boy, their world is just not what we all thought it was going to be, and everybody is experiencing that. The Globe just ran a story a couple of days ago about the impact of homeschooling on older children in a household who have to care for what would be daycare students and toddlers, the impact on all of that. In the Senate, what exactly can you do to help our educational system in situations like that, or just with this whole homeschooling and kind of what does the fall look like?
Sure. So education, as you said, near and dear to my heart. My oldest was a fourth grade teacher. My youngest graduated Sandwich High School. What I've been doing right now, before and during this pandemic, is sitting down face to face or Zooming with superintendents of schools in the district. So the first thing is to listen to the boots on the ground and find out What are they experiencing? What are the real stumbling blocks? One of the things I found out is that there's terrific programs to be able to get younger kids computers. That's brilliant. The donations or otherwise, but a lot of times families don't have another computer, or they're sharing computers. So there is this telecommuting competition. I actually had a phone message, because I give just about everyone my phone number, my cell phone. The woman did not leave her name, but she said, "Susan, I have an idea. Why don't you have a staggered schedule where school is, say, for example, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then, and work alternates, so that parents, who have incredible demands, where they're trying to make a living and be productive at work, but they are also homeschooling. And, you have the jokes on Facebook. If teachers should be paid way more. If I wanted to be a teacher, I wouldn't be a, bus driver or whatever. It's incredibly challenging. I remember holding my granddaughter while my daughter, the teacher, would be correcting papers into the night. So and then there's the issue of teachers learning Zoom and adapting all their lessons. So the first order of business is that, we listen to specifics about what sort of support educators need, and that's what we fund.
On the issue of transportation, you have said that alternative transportation is lacking in this district. Where exactly do you see alternative transportation changing in your mind? What are you calling for specifically?
I'm really looking at more funding for regional transportation options. That is coupled with the way we're moving toward development. So we're moving as chair of economic development in Barnstable County, we're looking at regional centers. It's smarter for our water treatment. It's smarter for the cost of our housing, and it allows an active lifestyle for both younger and older folks to be able to have resources they need, whether it's grocery stores, post offices, and other amenities. So, I think those are the kinds of things that regional transportation can really, plug in and energize. And you look at right now on the Cape side, as I remember the Cape RTA, one of the creative things they're doing, they're in schools right now. They're in schools with it's like a Jeopardy game, so that, in a rural community, it's not always facile for kids to jump on a bus and get to school the way it is in more urban communities. So I think if we include education in the idea that you don't have to just take one person, one car, it's bad for the climate, there's a lot of emissions. I think if we together can just make a commitment towards cleaner air and really kind of more convenient lifestyle in that regard, I think we're going to be able to do it. I was on the phone last night with a group of young Democrats, and we're learning from them. They're already there in many respects. So, one of the things I love about doing this is really kind of capitalizing on other folks' ideas. A lot of brilliant people out there.
Hmm. On the topic of climate change, picking up on what you were just saying, you have referred to our climate as being in a state of emergency. And climate change isn't just a global issue, to your point, it is right in our backyards. And most of your district, this district, is coastline.
Right.
What unique climate change initiatives, and you were just mentioning, farming out in the waters. Can you unpack that a little bit more in terms of what you envision as state senator to tackle climate change in this district?
Sure. So as chair of the Board of Selectmen in Falmouth, I started a committee, and I think it was the first in the area. It was called Climate Action Committee. So there are a lot of brilliant people. We have academics, we have schools, we have experts in the area. But every project that we were moving was really about the present circumstances and in terms of infrastructure. And the idea is that we look at, do we really want to put $1 million into a roadway system that the research tells us is going to be covered by water in X amount of years? It may be 50 years, it may be whatever. Shouldn't we have a plan B so that, for example, it has real dollar meaning, because if you're a homeowner in a coastal community, you want to know that's your nest egg. You want to know what that's going to be worth in terms of, whether there's erosion, whether there are water quality issues. So these are the kinds of things where, and what about municipal costs, taxpayers' money? I think that there has to be, funding for towns to have someone who is a planning expert with respect to coastal issues, so that we can look at, what kind of things should we invest in? Should we invest in battery, power, if we're looking at, all of these, the solar fields that we're developing? So I think that it's really about putting tax dollars into programs that are going to benefit the community into the future, and keep our air clean, and keep our, address our coastline issues.
In Sandwich, our beaches are in really rough shape. I mean, the erosion, man-made, from the canal impact, it really is an issue. And when you look at climate change, those two words put together can take some people to make their eyes roll back and kind of think, yeah, that's just such a big problem. That's such a big issue, or I don't even believe it. How much of a pushing the rock up the hill is that topic, as you just explained it, going to be, or would be, under your leadership in this district?
So, when you talk about funding municipal issues, where, you might need a fire station right now. Those folks who are first line workers, or, they're in a terrible situation. It's hard to work. That's something that folks can see. It's like you need a new refrigerator versus, someday you're going to need a new roof. Do you start a fund right now to repair the roof? This is the way I look at climate change initiatives. As your state senator, I would incentivize communities to right now start those rainy day funds. And I'm not saying necessarily it's the first thing we do in the middle of a pandemic. I'm just saying, as part of municipal planning going forward with respect to climate change issues, that's something that should be considered, so that municipalities and taxpayers are able to handle those challenges when they do come. So it's something that I don't think can be, done on a dime. I think it's part of the eventual plan.
You state on your website that you will, quote, will continue to be a strong voice for the safety of our communities and hold Holtec responsible for the safe decommissioning of the Pilgrim nuclear power plant. When you say continue, what do you mean?
Thanks. So, as an Assembly of Delegates member, I attended the State House hearing on Holtec. And one of the folks that was testifying, Diane Turco, was talking about she brought her metal coffee cup, the travel from the car coffee cup, and said that the one thing folks have to realize is that the Holtec cast, the containers are not much thicker than this. And, that's just one of the issues, along with the, having the protection in terms of, just looking at trespassers, or moving the gates right up to the door. There are minimal safety precautions right now that Holtec is presenting. And I think that it's not nearly enough. Our safety is paramount, and continued oversight needs to happen. That's where Senator DiMacedo, along with Senator Sear, along with Rep. Peake, along with Rep. Fernandez, all have been pushing this, and I will join those folks in fighting for the more safety with respect to the decommissioning of Plymouth.
On the topic of safety, you have vowed to work to create a dedicated revenue stream for a small business type MSBA program for fire and police stations. What do you mean?
So I thought about it when I first started campaigning, and I was looking at the building infrastructure challenges that the fire stations in Plymouth were battling, asbestos, structural, those kinds of things. And the town has really been doing a good job in the health department in terms of really looking at fixes and the extent of the problem. And we do already have a state program for rebuilding and building schools. And I think that as your senator, I would extend that program to include municipal buildings such as fire stations so that the entire district and the entire state should be able to maintain its infrastructure without having such a heavy burden on taxpayers.
Well, you look at Vinny DiMacedo, who, how long was he in office as state senator?
Oh gosh, he looks so young. I'm not sure, but it was a long time. He's
I think 45, 60 years, maybe. He is a
that,
young,
that could well be.
exactly.
We've done
He's
a lot of events together, although we're on opposite sides on certain issues.
yeah, so he's worked very hard. Nobody is perfect. And I think the reason that we have successors is that you can either carry the baton forward on a job well done and there's more work to be done, and also to pivot and change and say, I appreciate it, but we're going in a different direction. Uh, what do you feel you need to pivot and change? What will feel different in your administration from a DiMacedo administration?
So, I often spoke with Senator DiMacedo about economic development issues, and that's something where I think that I have more of a real forceful bent toward really supporting the. Senator DiMacedo was a very good at constituent services. I strive to be, as good as he was in that regard. That's something that a lot of folks talk about, where I may not have agreed with Senator DiMacedo on certain issues, but he was always there. He always, returned the call. He always listened. That's something that I'm very strong on constituent services. Terry Murray, the Senator Terry Murray, I think that you'll see a lot of comparisons where very smart business person, very smart on stretching a dollar. I'm sort of a fiscally conservative Democrat, or fiscally smart. I like to say I like when projects can really support 2 or 3 initiatives and that we make money from investments that we make. So that's what you can expect.
We've got a couple of more minutes. I could talk to you all day, but I've got a couple more minutes. Campaign, when I have public servants, people in my family who have run for office very successfully. And so I've kind of seen from the inner workings, here's what my platform will be. Here's what I believe is to be I want people to choose me, the reason for people to choose me. But that's not necessarily what people are saying in the grocery store and at CVS when they bump into you. Tell me what people are saying to you when they see you and say, Susan, I'm glad you're running. Here's the issue I'm most interested in. Are you hearing anything unique?
It's, there always are issues on, I want to be sure my money is spent well. What is this going to cost down the road? How can we, how can we put into place, for example, maintenance plans with initiatives that we make? For example, we buy equipment for the states and the towns. How do we make sure that the maintenance for those things are, it's just really, it's about practical concerns of, as a taxpayer, where should I put my money? I would say that's probably the most common issue. When you look at right now with COVID, that you need a real sort of specialized intent look on, review everything in terms of what we really need, because we are at the same time going to be incurring expenses. So I like the Senate president's program in terms of, the transportation initiatives where we're putting people to work and we're getting better quality of life. Those are the kinds of programs that people know that they're going to get a return on every dollar they spent when they put me into office.
Let's wrap up with a couple of quick questions for you, if you don't mind. What have you learned about you, yourself, during this campaign?
So, I think in terms of strengths, I certainly have I have a wide sort of bandwidth of knowledge on government and how to get things done, and I have a wide amount of support and can hit the ground running. With respect to the COVID, I think that it's really brought me back to almost those issues in childhood of when my family was not well off. We struggled. It was about putting food on the table. It's about how do you care for your kids? How do you make sure they know how to do this new learning? I would say the thing I learned the most is that the human element is equally as important as the economic element, and we have to do both right as best we can.
Quickly, term limits, yes or no?
Uh, I'm going to say no. And I know that's surprising because I really appreciate all of the sort of turnover, new ideas. I think that should be a matter of voting. In terms of, I just happen to have the experience of often being on boards and in offices where institutional history is crucial. And so I guess that's why that's my sort of reflex.
Is Trump going to win in November?
I'm going to say no. I think folks are frightened by the idea of the pandemic becoming a political issue more than a health issue. That health concerns like women's reproductive rights and gun legislation and all of that seems to be up for grabs for reasons that we really should be more focused on just economic stability after our stability with our health.
Who do you think Joe Biden will pick as his running mate? And I'm sure I'm getting a sense you probably know. I think you have a good hunch.
There are so many incredible women. I mean, as I grew up and as I went through law school, I was at the Gloria Steinem, Bella Abzug, and we're still here. So I think the most important thing is that we have a presidential candidate who has said right off the bat, that's important to me. He's got a lot of talented women to choose from. It would be like picking one of my children.
Well, you didn't answer the question because I do want you to pick a child. Do you feel anybody has a strong shot?
I think Senator Warren does. I think Senator Klobuchar does. I think those are, right off the bat. I think the two of them have the most visibility, but I still think he may surprise us.
Last question. What do you do for fun?
Well, I'm so ridiculously simple. I have like clothes that are 30 years old from, I like walk to the beach. I love a sunset. I mean, that's real, I'm just one of those people that works a lot, enjoys public service, enjoys my job. I'm a lawyer who really likes being a lawyer. So, and I like helping people with problems. I really like to the extent that I've worked on, having relationships where, we can make sure your voice is heard. That's probably the best part of my day.
Excellent. Let's end on that note, on a nice positive. We talked about a lot of really important issues. And despite the fact that we're in a pandemic and you and I are probably sitting 15 miles away from each other, I still feel like there's a great opportunity from this discussion for people to learn a little bit more about you. Any final thoughts?
Just thank you to all the listeners. Great interview. Thanks to Sandwich Public TV. And please go vote early now. And then on May 19 is very important.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Susan. It's really been a pleasure. I'm so glad that you joined me. Stay put right there just for a second. I want to say goodbye to my viewers and also thank Paula Johnson at Sandwich Television. She and her whole team, Tyke and Rob, and I mean, everybody does a really fantastic job. I thank them. They make me look good. Well, and my wife's decorations behind. I can't take credit for that.
Credit where credit's due.
Exactly, exactly. So definitely get out and vote Tuesday, May 19th. I am Greg Anderson, and I will see you next time.
Thank you.